Hello, folks, and welcome to Got Yer Back NHL edition. LeBrun and Rishaug. We got a short shift edition for you today, and we're excited about it. Flames General Manager Brad Treliving joins Pierre and I. Had a great discussion about a wide range of topics surrounding a heck of a good start for the Calgary Flames. A reminder that the podcast is brought to you by Cross Country Canada Supplies and Rentals. Cross Country Canada started back in 2014 with just four pals who wanted to offer rentals and supplies to the industry that they were passionate about. And with just a garage and a folding table, they began laying out their plans. And with their connections throughout the oil patch, they quickly gained a reputation as the guys who could get her done. They were growing so quickly, they were bought by an American company in less than a year. But you know what? So passionate about the business, they turned around and bought it back a couple years later. And now it's 100% Canadian owned and operated. And they got multiple locations across Western Canada, over 100 employees, and they've diversified into every area of the construction industry. That is Cross Country Canada Supplies and Rentals. So we check in with our good pal, Pierre LeBrun, proudly wearing, I feel like we talk about your Dallas apparel every week on the podcast, Pierre. It's getting old, but you just keep bringing it week after week after week.
Well, I just don't own anything else, Ryan. So it's a bit embarrassing in a way. I'm going to have to upgrade, my clothing line here because there's a star. There's a star on every shirt I own.
There is. And you must be feeling so good, like so happy right now.
I mean, listen, 6-2 is a mighty beautiful place. Of course, it's not 8-0 like the rival Eagles. So,
right.
You know,
always room for improvement. By the way, we do red card, yellow card, no card on the show every once in a while. And I hope you're ready for what's probably coming Wednesday, because as we talked about on the last pod, you stating that literally all you have are your suits for TSN and your Dallas Cowboys apparel, and basically making it clear on any given date night you might go on, you wear team apparel. We're going to put that out there for people, Pierre, but I don't think that's going to go well for you.
I mean, it is what it is. That's part of my fabric, man. And my wife accepts that. I mean, it doesn't mean that she loves it, but she understands where the Dallas Cowboys are in my life.
Yeah, you just got to do you. You just got to do you. By the way, we'll tell people, if you're watching on YouTube, I'm at the helm running all the controls for this edition of the podcast. So every once in a while, Pierre's face gets a little pixelated and I got to go in and tweak something. So I don't know. Sometimes I'll catch it and sometimes I won't, but that's what you get when you try and run your own tech stuff on the podcast. Listen, we're going to get to the interview with Brad Treliving in a couple of minutes, but I want to go around the horn a little bit in some of the Canadian cities here, Pierre. So let's do a breakdown brought to you by Pro Hockey Life, and we'll remind you they've got 16 locations across the country taking care of all your hockey needs, and they really specialize in pro sharpening and repair for your skates. Their expert pro shop technicians can provide you with a wide range of skate sharpening and profile options that best suit your skating style. Between their professional by hand sharpening or the Sparks automatic sharpening machines, they'll make sure you walk out with the perfect edge on your skates. And if we're going to talk about Canadian teams, why wouldn't we start with the Toronto Maple Leafs, Pierre? A road trip out west that did not treat them well. I don't know what level DEFCON it's at. But it feels like those uncomfortable conversations about change are starting to bubble up even more so than they were after the first couple of games. Where do you think things are at in Toronto? What's real, the market and the noise versus internally what's being talked about?
I mean, it's only 10 games into the season, so to me, it's premature to even suggest a coaching change. Having said that, this team is not playing well. And the frustration from Sheldon Keefe, the head coach, is obvious. It's apparent. It was apparent during the timeout in Anaheim last night. Mm-hmm. It's been apparent in some of his post-game comments since the start of the year, a bunch of times. And I think more globally, from talking to people in other front offices in the summer into camp and heading into the season, it was interesting to hear from a few people that they could feel sort of the pressure that was on the Leafs organization heading into this year in terms of their own interactions with the Leafs. Like that's that's sort of interesting to me. And listen, it's apparent. Kyle Dubas, the GM, is on an expiring deal. He's a lame duck GM. It doesn't mean that he can't find himself a new contract if the Leafs finally get out of the first round and go deep, of course. But I like to say, let's start with the facts, and then we can go through the rest. That's a fact. He's on an expiring deal, and with that comes a certain kind of white noise, because if management, or if ownership, was 100% sure they were going to extend him, they would have done it this summer. Let's be honest. Okay. And so that's there. The pressure to finally get this team over the hump out of the first round. I mean, again, 19 years without winning a playoff series.
Yeah.
Sometimes I just say it again because I think people forget, especially in other markets. Now, this group of people have nothing to do with, the first 12 years or whatever, but nevertheless, in the Austin Matthews era, as I like, let's be fair about Brendan Shanahan, Austin Matthews, and then eventually Dubas, Sheldon Keefe, they're still 0-4. And so I honestly believe, forget what the media and the fans are talking about today. I think the pressure from the start has been from within, more so than I perceived before with the Leafs. And I think we're seeing some of that right now.
Austin Matthews, 3 goals in the 10 games to open up the season. Checking out his shots here as well. He's got 48 shots in those 10 games, so averaging 4.8 shots a game. He's shooting at 6.3%. I mean, this is the best goal scorer.
That's going to go up.
It's going up for sure. But what are you seeing in the quality of his play, and is there concern level just about the overall quality maybe that they're getting from him, let alone production?
I just think that in his case, once the shooting percentage gets back to any kind of career norm, that the goals are going to come. That's not a big concern for me. I do think 5-on-5 that him and Marner and Tavares on another line, the numbers aren't there. They really are relying on the power play, so that's a concern. But the reality is, it's on the blue line. They're just not very good defensively right now, and that's affecting every other part of their game. Again, I think last year they started, I think 2-4, and it was a complete meltdown. Again, the reason it becomes a meltdown isn't just because it's Toronto and it's a big Canadian market. It's because of the spillover from the previous first round exit every time. And so it just adds a little more, I would say, like a lack of patience from the market when they have a tough start. But I honestly believe that they are going to get out of this. Where it leads, I have no idea. But I'm just saying, I don't think this is headed into a situation where they're going off the rails and they can't fix it. Not in my opinion.
The only thing that can soothe angry Leaf fans' nerves is playoff wins. And there's no way to get playoff wins for quite some time. So every time there's a loss, the nerve gets flicked. Every time there's a win, it is what it is. And relief does not come until April and May. And so it'll be a tumultuous ride with each loss throughout the season. Let's shift over to the West Coast. You had a chat with Jimmy Rutherford in your article at The Athletic. Little bit of relief for them. Couple of wins can really change everything, but still the start is nowhere near where they wanted it to be. What sense did you get from talking with Jimmy Rutherford and where their head is at?
2 wins and 2 trades later, right?
Yeah.
I can do wonder for a market. It's funny, speaking of passionate hockey markets, I mean, Vancouver to me is so unique. The way the fans love their team, but also absolutely went into a meltdown when this team started 0-5-2, right? One of the things that I asked Jim Rutherford was, what's your vision for this team now that you're in this hole for the rest of the year? And he said, no different than how I felt about this team before the puck dropped for the season, which is that he believes they will contend for a playoff spot. They will be more competitive, and that they have the ability to get out of this hole. I really enjoyed our conversation. One of the things, Ryan, and you've interviewed Jim Rutherford a million times as well in your career, is that how calm he was throughout our 20-minute conversation over the weekend. Like I'm asking him about the market and the meltdown of the fans and this and that, and his voice just never. He's
not going to get too rattled.
No, and it struck me that essentially this is one of the reasons they brought him in. Like he's got a first GM in Patrick Alvin. He's got a front office that's been built out. And I think his presence during this period where they started 0-5-2 and the whole market melted down is important. Now, at the end of the day, he'll be judged like everyone else on the Canucks, becoming a more competitive organization and getting through these rough times, these troubled waters. But, one of the questions that I asked him, and I don't know how you feel about this, Ryan, but I asked him, I said, I got to say, I was a bit surprised when you extended JT Miller.
Right.
Because he's the kind of piece that, had you moved in the summer, that, gets you the kind of assets I think that in many ways the Canucks need, especially in their pipeline. And he gave an interesting answer about why I should have been surprised, or no one should be surprised, because he's not the type of player you should move when you're trying to build a competitive team. So I think the bottom line is not that I didn't know this, Ryan, but it's always interesting to hear it right from the horse's mouth, is that there's no appetite for a gigantic rebuild there, right?
Right.
It really is about trying to improve bit by bit, trade by trade, by making smart decisions, improving that organization while trying to stay competitive, which, let's face it, is hard.
Conventional wisdom on building a championship team is a rock-solid goaltender, which they have in Demko, a world-class defenseman they have in the making here in Hughes, and real solid depth up the middle, which they also, you could argue, they've got pretty good depth up the middle. So it's like the spine of the team is there, and it's more filling it in along the edges. Do you need to do a complete rebuild when you have those core pieces largely in place? Of course not. But I agree with you. The Miller thing was interesting. It signaled that it was more about the here and now, and that maybe organizationally they felt they were closer than some might have thought they would be, or where their starting gate on this retooling actually was. Let's go to Edmonton. So Connor McDavid is absolutely shooting the lights out. A couple of points a game, 9-9. Just scoring all kinds of goals here. But in net, it's interesting. What's the I'm in this market. I follow this team every day. What's the perception outside the market on what's happening in net, as Stuart Skinner just got back-to-back, not back-to-back starts, but they played 3 games. They had a back-to-back against St. Louis, Chicago, and then a couple of days later they had the Battle of Alberta. They gave Skinner the St. Louis game, the tougher of the back-to-back, and then they gave him the Battle of Alberta, which he played quite well, and he won both of those games. What's the perception out there?
Well, listen, it would have actually been noticed by Toronto Maple Leafs fans that Jack Campbell didn't get the Battle of Alberta start. No, I mean, that's how the world works. And certainly, noted by me as well. And listen, tip of the hat to Jay Woodcroft. I mean, I sometimes think as a coach, you could maybe take the easier way out, right? And say, well, this is the guy management signed. I should probably just give him the start. And he clearly made a hockey decision there and said, right now, Skinner's playing better. And he's going in. And with all that being said, knowing that he's going to need both guys throughout the year, but it affords Jack Campbell a bit of time here, I think, to just find his legs and deal with the adjustment of changing organizations. But I tell you what, 40 saves for Skinner Saturday night. I was watching. He was outstanding, and it's a good problem to have. And I hope that people in your market in Edmonton aren't trying to make this a negative thing because Jack Campbell's the one making $5 million. But you need 2 guys. We said this off air, you and I, but the days of riding one guy in goal in the modern NHL, there's a very few teams left that have that kind of guy. Like, it really has to be about 2 guys for the health of the goalie, for the depth, the sports science of it, the analytics. You need 2 guys. And, I think they always have 2 guys.
Yeah, and I think it was a gutsy call by Jay Woodcroft, frankly, for both of them. To give him the first of the back-to-back against St. Louis, and then to give him the Battle of Alberta.
Right.
I could see how that would be viewed elsewhere. But the truth is that I think this is going to go back and forth all year. I think Skinner's going to have some rough patches. I think Campbell will have some rough patches. And I think it sends a message to your team that you're playing for keeps, that it doesn't necessarily matter contract values and lengths and positioning, that this head coach is willing to do what he needs to do to win his team a hockey game on any given night. And I think it needs to make sense to players. If you're in an open competition for playing time, I think it needs to make sense. If you play really well, you need to get that ice time. And I think he was just watching what was happening in front of him and making decisions based on what he saw. And I think there's going to be times where it sways back to Campbell. But the thing to keep in mind, Pierre, like Stuart Skinner was always going to play 30 games this year. This was always going to be like a 52-30 split, right? He's only started 3 of the 9 games.
Yeah, and he can't go down, right? So, I mean, this had to be a year for his development where he could get lost in the shuffle, right?
Yeah, no question about it. Okay, that was the breakdown brought to you by Pro Hockey Life. On the other side of the break, we're going to catch up with Flames General Manager Brad Treliving. You're listening to Got Yer Back NHL Edition, brought to you by Cross Country Canada Supplies and Rentals. We want to tell you about a truly Canadian company. Cross Country Canada Supplies and Rentals provides equipment and supplies to all facets of the Canadian construction industry. But what sets them apart is their get-her-done attitude. It's a core value of their company. I've been to the offices. I've seen how they proudly display that on the wall at each branch. Every one of the staff members lives by the get-her-done formula to ensure they'll never let their customers down. They'll bend over backwards to get their clientele what they need when they need it. They don't make excuses. Cross Country Canada takes great pride in this attitude, and they truly believe that the success of their customer is their success. You can't get much more Canadian than that. All right, time now for Who's Got Your Back? And this segment brought to you by our friends at Liberty Smart Security, a company that specializes in having your back. High-quality advanced smart security systems for your home or your business. Liberty Smart Security uses leading-edge technology to protect the things that you value most in your life. Your home is your castle, so protect it with a Liberty Smart Security system. Visit libertysecurity.ca. I've been using a Liberty Security system, a smart home system, for the last 7 years, and it's awesome. The technology that they have at your fingertips is so cool. It can be as advanced as you want it, like geofencing and cameras and all this remote stuff, or it can be as simple as you want it. On, off, put in your code. Basically, anything you need to protect you, your family, or your business, Liberty Smart Security will help you customize it exactly the way you would like it. So, Pierre, was a treat having Brad Treliving on. Man, his Calgary Flames are off to some kind of start. You know, you think about the offseason and all the changes they made. We wondered, how's it all going to fit together? But, boy, got out of the gate real fast, real strong, and looked like a contender.
Yeah, and you know, I said this last week, but I honestly thought they'd be a 500 team in October, and not in a way that anyone would have panicked, for obvious reasons. I mean, those are your top minute guys that left and top minute guys that are coming back in trying to find their role. And to be honest, I mean, we saw Monday Jonathan Huber on a different line, now playing with Kadri instead of Lindholm. In a way that is happening, but within the team context, the team hasn't missed a beat. Yeah. So it really is impressive that, you know, as Brad Treliving said, they don't think they're firing on all cylinders, but they're banking points. And that's a big deal, man, especially in that division with the Oilers and Vegas. You know, we'll see where all this heads, but you want to bank those points early for sure.
How about Daryl Sutter post-game the other night? Like, Daryl Sutter, you know, he is worth a couple of sound bites a year. Like last year, it was the whole be a waste of 8 days thing, facing Colorado in the playoffs. He had a couple of other ones that were just off the charts. So if anybody missed the game, Jonathan Huberdeau left the bench for a little while during the game. And on the broadcast, they were speculating there might have been an injury of some sort there or whatever. So we're going to let you hear it. One curse word in here, but it's minor, so we apologize. But Daryl Sutter post-game asked about Jonathan Huberdeau.
Left the bench for a little bit in the first period. Are you able to say what it was?
I think he had to go take a shit.
Okay. Like, just, I mean, classic Daryl Sutter. Like, what did you think when you heard that, Pierre?
You know, I guess he could have said no. I don't know. It might have been a different way to handle that.
Lower body ailment or like...
That's, you know what? There's no BS with Daryl Sutter.
Yeah, exactly. Well said, my friend. All right, brought to you by Liberty Smart Security. Here's Who's Got Your Back. Flames General Manager Brad Treliving. Brad, quite the start for your hockey team. And I think one of the things many people are wondering about here today, if your head coach is that blunt in the media, what is he like behind the scenes? Is he as forthcoming and blunt with his wording?
Yeah, no, you don't have to necessarily worry or wonder what Daryl's thinking, and I think that's a great trait. I know the media get a kick out of it, but all kidding aside, I think one of his strengths is clarity, both and most importantly, talking with players. I think any player, if you ask a player the thing they want the most from a coach is honesty. Um, and sometimes we don't necessarily like honesty if it's sort of pointing out some things that we can get better at. But whether it's the players, myself, Daryl's clear in terms of what he sees and what he believes, and shares that with not only his players, myself, and I think it's a great trait, and it helps us get right to when we're trying to make decisions, you cut through the clutter. So you never have to worry. You never leave a meeting with him wondering, I wonder what he's thinking, because he'll tell you.
Or a press conference without a pretty good soundbite,
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah.
Now, and you signed him to a contract extension earlier this season, or earlier this month, I guess, Brad. And it's interesting because I think when Daryl came back to coach, and at the time he signed a 3-year deal, it was like, okay, is it to get the program to a certain point and then hand it off again? But it's clear to me, and you could tell me, Brad, but won the Jack Adams last year. He's really renewed, I think, his love for his craft, and I think him agreeing to an extension tells you that he's far from done here.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I talked to Daryl and convinced him to come back here, it's like everything else. I think one of the he's got lots of energy left. And I think one thing that's underrated with Daryl is he's on top of what the game is today. I think some people may think, wow, geez, when I brought it back, I know the question was always asked, well, when Daryl's been out for a bit, is the game passed him by? And that statement could be so far from the truth. He's he stays on top of the trends of what's going on in the league, and I think he's very progressive in terms of how he analyzes the game, the not only from how he sees it. And I think one of the greatest traits he's got, if you talk to anybody that's coached with him, the game slows down for him. He's able to process what's going on behind the bench without, a lot of people have to go back and even myself on a certain instance, go back and take a look at video. He sees everything that's going on in the game sort of in real time, able to process it. But he's up to speed with the modern game, and he's very progressive. I think he's got some foundational principles that, in my mind, never go out of style. Obviously, he's demanding of his players. He holds people accountable, and he pushes people. And I think he's got great structure in how he goes about building his team. So those things, I think, whatever era you're in, are important. But he's also very up to speed in today's game, and his track record speaks for itself. So I think he's got lots of hockey ahead of him, Pierre. And to me, getting extended was a priority going into the summer. We talked about it, him and I, at the end of last year, and we're able to do it here, during training camp.
Brad, a lot was made of the offseason that you had, the curveballs that you were thrown, and the way that you adjusted and made some pretty high-profile moves on the fly. The one narrative heading into the season was, with so many new parts, how are they going to gel together? That was sort of the question hanging out there, because there was so much change and such big-minute positions in your lineup. Maybe people wondered, how was it going to fit together? Well, the results in the early going here have really been something. And I wonder if even in some ways the extent to which it's all come together and worked has even surprised you a little bit. Just doesn't seem to have needed that 2, 3, 4 month period for people to settle in like we often see.
Well, I think your comment's the right one, Ryan. every year you go through transition. I don't care what team you are. You see 3, 4, 5, 6 players change over in any team. The maybe the uniqueness of our situation was you're talking about guys at the high end of the food chain here. Now, having said that, we'll take the points. We're not going to give them back that we got to this point. The encouraging thing for me is I think we're still sorting some things out. You know, I don't think we're firing on all cylinders here yet. I've been encouraged, obviously, with the returns early, but to me, you know, even when you talk about, you know, some of the bigger names that have come in, I still think they're finding their way a little bit. I think there's been positive steps each game, even in our last game. We look Saturday night, although, you know, and lots been made in our market about Jonathan Huberdeau. I think, you know, he was around it all night. You know, I thought that line, although they didn't score, they created a lot. There was a lot of opportunities. And I think, you know, you look at him and McKenzie, you know, it's a big change when you've been in one place for so long, and even the style and the systematically, the change, I think each day that they get under their belt, they're becoming more and more comfortable. So I guess the encouraging thing for me, Ryan, is we've been able to bank some points here early. And I still think there's certainly another level, both from an individual standpoint and then from a team standpoint that we can get to. So, you know, it's been and we've had some stiff tests every night. It sounds cliche, but it's not. Every night's a tough night in this league. But, you know, we've played some top teams, and like I said, we'll take the points that we've got, but we know we got more to give yet.
I think it's just surreal how Nazem Kadri's fit in seamlessly so far, Brad. And I think back to the story of how you end up with him, not only this summer where he ends up, you know, on the market for so long and still with a ton of interest. Obviously, he was taking his time, and how it really worked to your advantage that he was still there in August, that you could sign him. But even prior to that, and I know that this is a delicate one, but when he turned down a trade to Calgary a few years ago going to Colorado, but it's just interesting sometimes in this game, the path that these things take. And now here he is, and he looks like a Flame, if you know what I mean. Yeah. He just feels like he fills a void, and it just feels like one of those signings that was meant to be.
Yeah, no question. He's fit in. And I think, you know, there's certain guys that fit in wherever, but he certainly is our kind of player. I think that experience he had in Colorado, and then ultimately winning last year, he has added almost another layer to him with that championship pedigree. I think it's like anything else. I think you know a player quite well. We've had a lot of interest in Naz for a long time, but when you see them every day, there's probably even, you know, more to the player than maybe you envisioned. You know, his skill set. I mean, he's a high-end competitor. The preparation that he puts in, and then just the skill level. Knew he's a really good player, but when you get to see it every day, you know, he's got fast twitch hands, his ability to make plays, his ability to make plays on his own, make plays for his line mates, has been really welcome for us. And then just the preparation that he puts in. He asks a lot of questions. He's a positive influence with his line mates, but also demanding, pushing them to be better. And you're right. It's funny how the hockey world, it's a small world, as you guys know. It's a small world, and you never know how things are going to work out. And you know, going back has been well documented. We had a lot of interest in Naz a few years ago, and you know, we're glad that it worked out. And certainly there's no ill will from last time. I think, you know, Naz and I have talked a lot about it. That particular time, you know, he was thinking he was staying in Toronto, and you know, we were fortunate enough how things played out this summer. As you said, Pierre, that by the time we sort of got our house in order, you know, he was still there, and we were able to get a deal done. So he's been a great addition, fit in seamlessly, and we're lucky to have him.
Pretty good quality of competition in the early going here. You've beaten Colorado, Vegas, Carolina, Edmonton, and I know you just dropped one to Edmonton. But you faced some pretty stiff competition in the early going here and had pretty good results, Brad. I wonder, is there a metric outside of wins and losses that as a general manager you value and you keep a close eye on? Some specific metric or analytic that means something to you that you use to gauge where your group is at?
Yeah, for me, really two. It's ultimately it's your 5-on-5 play. I mean, special teams are huge in this league, and they can win and lose you games, but they'll sort of come and go. You know, you can see, excuse me, you can see a power play get on a roll. We've been strong on both sides of special teams to start the year, but ultimately to have ultimate success in this league, it's your 5-on-5 play. So to me, I look at our 5-on-5 play and I look at our, you know, ultimately our chances for and against. What are we creating and what are we giving up? And, you know, you can go through some times where you're getting points, but, you know, ultimately your game's got to be in order, you know, and if you're process driven, we all know this is a results oriented business. But if your process is proper, and that meaning if you're a strong 5-on-5 team, if you're limiting chances against and creating chances for, ultimately, you know, the results will follow. So those are things that we look at pretty closely, and you know, we're a high shot volume team. We like to put a lot of pucks on net, and we like to limit. You know, we don't like to give up a lot of chances. Don't like to give up a lot of shots. So, you know, when those areas of our game are in order, you know that our game's trending the right way. And like I said, I've been happy with, you know, the state of that. I think there's still more, you know, if you look at our 5-on-5 play, for the most part, it's been good. It's the finishing part that is still got to come a little bit. But ultimately, you know, we've got enough people in our lineup, I think, that can finish. If we're creating enough, ultimately those results will follow. So lots to continue to work on, but for the most part, I've liked where our game's been at.
So, Brad, this year's a version of what's going on with the top pending UFA is out in Boston with David Pastrnak. And I was thinking of you the other day. Last year was Johnny Gaudreau, and I was thinking with every update in Boston on what's going on with those talks, you know, it's a big story in Boston. I was wondering if you picked up the phone, chatted with Don Sweeney, and said, "It's all yours, buddy. You got it this year. See you later." No, I'm just kidding. But it's you know, can you talk about the pressure involved in that kind of thing, and also the fact that in replacing Johnny Gaudreau and obviously Matthew Tkachuk, you didn't just acquire top players, you signed them. And, you know, how much of that did you know you could pull off as you're making, especially the trade with Florida, that you're not replacing a problem with another, in other words. You have to make sure you had some stability there.
Yeah, those are always tricky, and especially in the Canadian market, as you guys know.
Yeah.
You guys tend to ask the odd question.
Come on now.
And but I think, you know, you try to manage that process, right? And you know, ultimately, a deal's got to work for both sides, and you can use all the cliches you want, but you know, once you get into the season, you're trying to. The job as a manager is to try to, you know, limit the obstacles as you possibly can, and direct the focus on the team. And you know, we knew when we made that, you know, first of all, you were going through the process with the trade with Florida and evaluating the different opportunities that were available to us. We felt strongly that the deal in Florida was the one, not only that was the best out there for us, but the one we wanted to pursue. But we also knew that it came with, you know, some questions. Both Joe and Mackenzie were in the final year of their contract. So I'd be lying to you if I told you at the time of the deal that we knew we were going to get both signed. It certainly was our intention. We communicated that to both camps. And then we got into the process of talking to you know, both the players and their representatives. And, you know, we were able to get deals done, but I don't think you get just a deal done at all costs. You know, at the end of the day, it's gotta, we live in a cap world. We live in a cap world that's been flat for the most part, the last couple of years. You know, there's going to be, you know, there's projected to be a little bit of growth. Hopefully more growth than we anticipate coming in the future. But those are all things that you have to take into consideration. So when we did that deal, we knew, listen, we're acquiring some really good players. We knew their contractual status. We communicated early that, our intention is to get these players signed. We were able to get Joe done, within probably the next few weeks. I can't remember how long it was. And then, brought Mackenzie in and negotiated with his representative over the course of what was the remainder of the summer and into training camp. And we're able to get that done. So, in a cap situation, it's a pie, right? And there's only, you have to distribute it as best you can. We're excited that we've got both players done, that we don't have to answer those questions. But you don't do it just so that you get rid of a narrative. We felt it was important to get both players signed, and we're glad that they're under contract.
Yeah, no kidding. Definitely puts a different spin on the trade with both guys locked up. The way you managed to get them. Before we let you go, Brad, as you know, the name of the podcast is Got Your Back, and we love asking people about their Got Your Back story. So when I throw that idea at Brad Treliving, who had your back?
Well, I'm lucky. I've had a lot, but probably most recently, I'd have to tip my hat to my daughters. As we talked about, It was a busy summer, and I'll probably be crucified for this. I may or may not have forgot about a wedding anniversary on a certain day in the summer until I had two teenage daughters that, sort of looked after that for me and kind of dug me out of a huge hole. So I'm gonna have to give the nod to them. Usually not that, don't crucify me, Ed. I'm usually pretty good on that stuff, but we had a little bit going on around in July.
A few things.
And,
a few things going on.
And good for them.
Also, so really in the end, you didn't forget, though. What you're saying is you didn't forget.
Well, no, I totally forgot. And they just kind of said,
it wasn't a special one. It wasn't a special one, was it? It wasn't like a 20th or something? Or?
No, I think it's 22 now.
Right.
And, but it was, they kind of gave me a, hey, dum-dum, guess what you forgot to do today, but we got you covered, got some flowers, made sure everything was looked after. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, good girls.
Yeah, no kidding.
Right
raised them well. Yeah. Brad, we really appreciate your time. Lastly, I'm always fascinated by what the whiteboard in a general manager's office might look like. And I'm wondering if, just for the benefit of this interview, if you cleared yours off, because the whiteboard behind you has nothing on it. I always envision there's names and numbers and salaries.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff on it. It's actually covered up. It's not cleared off, but that's a screen that's pulled down. So I didn't want to be caught on a video with, hey, look what's in the background. So we've got a little trick screen that pulls down. So
very smart, very smart. Yeah. Well, Brad, listen, congratulations on a great start. I look forward to seeing you on the trail here soon, and really appreciate you taking some time for us.
You bet. Thanks, guys.
And a big thanks once again to Flames General Manager Brad Treliving. That'll wrap up this week's Got Your Back Short Shift Edition. Big thanks to our sponsors, Cross Country Canada Supplies and Rentals, as well as Pro Hockey Life, and of course, Liberty Smart Security. Full-length podcast coming your way on Wednesday. Mystic Mike Johnson is going to join Pierre and I. We'll take a look back at what was the first month of the National Hockey League season. Thanks for your downloads and your subscriptions, folks. We really appreciate your support. Leave us a review on iTunes if you have a couple of extra minutes. Tell your friends. Subscribe if you haven't already. Look forward to talking to you in a couple of days. Have yourselves a fantastic day, folks. Cheers.